You're live, Joe.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, Joe.
How many do we have here? We got,
I believe you've got 4, counting yourself.
okay.
You're waiting on,
Mr. Woods won't be participating, correct?
I believe that's, he said he might have a conflict, so I believe that's correct. You're also waiting on Mr. Claffey and Mr. Mortensen.
Okay, give him a few seconds.
I see Rod on the screen. Is he there? Rod, are you there?
I think Rod doesn't use the computer, he just calls in. Well, let's call the meeting to order. Mr. Barron, would you take the roll call if you please, would?
All right.
For the opening of the Town Hall Renovation Project Building Committee.
If members could signify their participation when their name is called. Counselor Bedrejko,
Here.
Counselor Minor,
Here.
Claffey, Mr. Mortensen,
Does it say what?
Mr. Murtha,
Here.
Okay.
Mr. Woods, Mr. Harpy.
Here,
You have a quorum.
thank you, sir. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the prior meeting minutes.
Make a motion, to approve the minutes of the last meeting in Merthyr.
Is there a second?
Chris Minor, second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. Public participation. Any member of the public wishing to speak, please state your name and address. Do we have anybody in the queue for public participation?
We have one attendee and she has raised her hand. I'll unmute her at this time and ask her to state her name and address for the record and then start speaking.
Thank you.
Barbara, you're all set.
Hi, Barbara Squillico, 275 Field Street. I attended the last meeting and there were a couple of issues that were mentioned during that meeting. And I'm hoping that this meeting will address some of the issues that were brought up last time. One was a concern that I
Phone call numbers? Yeah.
had with the generator not being big enough. I think what I'd like to know is what they felt was left out and why they feel that some of those things should be included. The second thing was talked about.
Barbara, I'm sorry for the background noise.
I know. That's okay. The second thing was that they had hired a company to sanitize. I guess I wanted to know how many applications they're going to perform and what the costs might be, if you know what that information is at this time. And also the cost to have the nurse that's going to be there to take everybody's temperature beginning and at the end of the day. Also, I just want to bring up one other thing that I have read a number of articles that have been in the newspaper and then have been on the website about Zoom and its lack of user privacy and security issues. And I don't know whether these are accurate or not, but I hope somebody will look into those because I think this is a serious thing and we should know whether that platform is something we want to use going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. This is Joe Harpy, the chairman. In terms of your question on the generator, IT had some concerns about the capacity of the generator in terms of what would be left in reserve. And the standard on average is 25% in reserve. However, the generator as delivered was higher than that, had less than 25%. And the question was raised by IT. We do have the firm DTC, which did the engineering analysis on the generator, reviewing that. And there are a couple of approaches. There are a number of questions that IT asked. And there are a couple of approaches to that. One is to take some of the items off, which is an option that they're looking at. And the other is to run the test concurrent with analyzing that part of it. There'll be several tests in the temporary location that the generator now sits to see where all of that capacity or lack of capacity meets the road, and then we'll make the adjustments as required. As to your question on the safety of the subcontractors relative to the virus, Downs had proposed, as you know, a number of steps to take in that area, and they've undertaken those. There's been no cost to the town at this point for any of those. Downs has absorbed that through the construction manager's contingency. And it's a good program. It's an important program, and it's consistent with the requirements that the governor has placed on construction projects. And to date, we've been already taking temperatures on site, and we've already been sanitizing the area. The sanitation was part of the proposal by Downs, and that has come at this point at no cost to the town. I don't know, Frank from Downs, did you want to add anything on your program, our program, with respect to safety?
Yeah, the one thing I'll touch on to answer some of Barbara's question in terms of the frequency of the sanitizing. So we're doing that twice a week. Going into next week, we'll be doing it on Tuesday, and then we'll do another application on Friday. We'll continue that over the next few weeks, and then we'll reevaluate the situation and decide whether or not we should continue. You know, hopefully not, but it remains to be seen. So for now, we're doing it twice a week, and we have a medical assistant on staff now taking temperatures throughout the day. We do have still about 75 to 80 workers on site, and that doesn't take into account the other traffic that we get in and out of the site, which would be delivery drivers, people that come onto the site that want to verify dimensions. It could be second-tier subcontractors or vendors. So that person taking temperature is on site right now full-time for the next 5 weeks or so.
Okay, thank you. And is there anyone, Paul, did you want to touch anything on the generator on Barbara's question?
Yeah, I think we're still waiting. I wasn't at the job meeting today, but I understand from speaking with Jeff Barron that we are still waiting for responses from QA&M and DTC regarding what size of a generator would have been needed in order to put everything in the building as proposed, minus any town equipment. We have not received that information at this point.
And Chris from Arcari, the architectural firm overseeing the project. Chris, do you have anything to add for Barbara on the generator as far as input? Maybe Chris can't hear me. I guess he can't. Okay.
Mr. Harpy,
Yes.
it appears on our attendees side, we have an individual named Anthony. It may be one of our members. Can I unmute him to verify?
Yes.
Thank you. Anthony, you should be unmuted. Is that Anthony Calafi?
Yes.
Yeah, this is he. This is he.
I
Hi,
am.
Anthony. Good evening.
Give me just a moment. I'm going to move you over to the participant side.
Thank you.
Barbara, did you have any other questions?
Hold on one moment. She's got to be unmuted first.
Sorry about that. I'm still trying to figure this out. No, I think the only other thing that I just wanted to make sure everybody was considering is the Zoom issue.
Oh, I'm
Again,
sorry.
like I said, I don't know whether that's accurate or inaccurate, but I've read a lot about it. So
Right.
thank you.
Yes, we are aware of that issue. And Paul, did you have any additional information you might be able to provide to Barbara on the Zoom issue?
Yes, I can. Paul Boutot from IT here. Zoom has some security issues that were identified. One of the things that everyone using Zoom should do is to make sure they have the most recent version of the Zoom client if they're participating in that manner. Zoom has made some changes on the back end of the system. Currently, the town of Newington only utilizes US-based or Canada-based data centers, so we do not let our traffic route through any other data center other than those two locations, so North America only. And we are not running anything confidential to where if you were a firm and you were doing trade secrets or whatnot, then you may be concerned about any of that traffic going across on your voice. But since we're running public meetings, the information that we're sharing or communicating with would be in a public forum. I think our security risks are pretty non-existent for what we're utilizing the platform at this time.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Thank you for calling in, Barbara. Any updates that we get on the generator, we'll make that public. And so far, so good in terms of temperature testing on the site, and as well as cleaning the equipment over a number of period of days. So thank you for calling and thank you for your questions. Okay, project update. Oh, I'm sorry. Any other member of the public? Any other individuals looking to speak under public participation?
At this point, we only have one attendee.
Okay, thank you. Project update, Downs.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. If we could put the agenda up on the screen. Starting with the financial summary. Thanks, James. So starting with the financial summary, looking at the last batch of approved changes going back to the last meeting, it was just a couple weeks ago, brings our total approved change order amount to $696,855.55. So that gives us a revised total GMP value of $28,457,844.55. Between the pending changes that I'm presenting this evening, which is about roughly a $20,000 give back, and the other approximate changes, which is also a negative value, nets a deduct of $104,105.09. So that would reduce the anticipated final GMP value to $28,353,739.36. When we look at the CM contingency that is part of the original GMP, we started with $831,809. So far to date, we've had approved COPs charged to the CM contingency totaling $295,289.39. The pending amount, keeping in mind that we have a $75,000 give back right now that would fund the owner's contingency within the 132,544.57. Keeping that in mind, that would reduce the CM contingency down to $403,975.04. And again, that is included in the base GMP contract. Taking a look at the owner's contingency, again, the amount that we reconciled back in January has not changed at $868,405. The approved amount in the owner's contingency is up to $638,676.55. Combined the two deep between the pending and approximate, the $20,538.59. That's the amount that I'm presenting this evening that nets out to that amount. And then the approximate, which is another deduct of $83,566.50. Those are credits to fund the owner's contingency, which would raise the amount of the owner's contingency to $333,833.54. Within the owner's soft cost, again, that amount has remained unchanged. I have not monitored that for the town, so that just has stayed flat at 1,706,810. That would bring the total project budget to 30,394,383. Any questions on that?
Yeah, do we raise our hands? Is there a button or something?
Just state your name, Gail. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Gail Bedraco. I'm just curious, between the construction matters contingency and the remaining owners contingency, we have about, less than $1 million, about 700,000, whatever. Do you feel comfortable with that, going through the entire demolition as well?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions of Frank?
Yeah, Rod, Joe,
Yes, sir.
Rod Mortensen. It's not a question for Frank, but I just want to let the committee know I had signed in by phone, which worked great the first meeting with Paul Boutat. And then I don't know what happened, but it disconnected. So I just wanted, for the record, I am on the meeting and the thing conked out again. So I've re-plugged it in. I don't know what's going on. I don't think it's anything on my end, but I missed the roll call, missed out the front, and I'm just plugging back in again now. So just for the record, I am here as of this point.
Okay, thank you, Rod.
I don't know if anyone else is using just a telephone, but if they are, I don't know if they have any problems either.
Ed Merther, I believe, is on the phone.
No problems on my end.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Eddie. I'm the odd duck out. All right, thank you.
Okay, Frank, go ahead, please.
Okay, get into the schedule update. Can we get that part of the agenda up on the screen, please?
Chairman Claffey, Mr. Minor had a question.
Oh,
okay.
Chris, go ahead.
Just real quick, Frank, I appreciate the CM reconciliation. Any idea on pushing for the next one? No, I got to push.
I'm sorry, what's that? I didn't catch the last
I want
part.
to know when you're going to give more contingency up.
Your next reconciliation efforts.
Honestly, Chris, probably not till we get closer to the end of the project.
Okay. As in the end of the project or as in the end of moving?
No, the end of the project.
Okay.
So closer to the end of the second phase of the project.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, Frank, go ahead, please.
All right, so schedule update. All right, so again, giving you guys a snapshot of completed work, work in progress, and work that's on the horizon. Taking a look at work that's been completed and just keeping in mind that this update is as of Monday, this past Monday. So even with this update, things have changed, and some of the work that's shown here in progress is actually complete, and I'll go through that with you. So work completed the veneer around the gymnasium. We're finally done. The brick is in place all the way around the gym, including the bump out, which was really the last leg of getting the veneer on the gym. So that's done. The footings and foundations at the entryways going into the town hall on the west and east side, that is complete, as well as the steel for those entryways. We have columns and beams that form the structural frame for those entries. The beams and columns have been set. The decking is on. There's still some detailing to do. It's certainly not 100%. In fact, we do have to make some adjustments to the west side steel. And we've got a steel crew mobilizing again this weekend to start up again at those locations to do the adjustments and get working on the welding and final detailing. Millwork, that's the cabinetry that goes basically throughout the second floor, primarily kitchenettes is what we're talking about. So a lot of that work has been done. I noted it as substantially complete because we're not 100%. We do have a few cabinets left to install on the second floor. but we're moving right along, and we'll probably get back on cabinets on the second floor getting into next week. Cable terminations and wiring terminations. So what I'm conveying there on the second floor is basically terminating all the power. So terminating so that we have outlets actually mounted in the wall now, power outlets, and we also have data outlets. We have those cables terminated as well, including fire alarm wire has been terminated, so you can actually see the speaker strobe device mounted to the walls now where they're required. Porcelain tile has been placed on the walls and the floors of the bathrooms on the first floor. We've gone through with the painter. We've completely done all of the prep and painting on the third floor, the Board of Ed space. All of the in-wall rough-in that's required for plumbing and electrical as it relates to the community center. So all that has been inspected, and that work is complete. All the door frames for the community center, those have been set. We've started prep in the gym. We've actually gone ahead and started to do all of the prep on the ceiling and joists. All the piping is getting painted now. The sheetrock inside the vault, so all of that is hung. In fact, we've got a taper working in there now, and they've moved on to taping all of the joints of the walls and the drywall ceiling. So taking a look at work in progress, exterior door frames, we have those set along the community center. Unfortunately, we've got a few locations where we have doors on back order. We had one door frame and door come in. It was the wrong color. Unfortunately, I'm not sure how that happened, but it's a manufacturer's issue. And so we've got a frame and a couple doors that are in refab right now. The cornice, as I call it, or some people have referred to it as EFIS, it looks like crown molding that goes around the building. So the last pieces of cornice went on the gym. We've got all sides done. We've wrapped that up yesterday. We have some canopy roofs that we're working on right now along the community center. We have these small overhangs. Anybody that has driven by or has seen it up close, we've got 6 locations where we have small overhangs at each entry going into the community center. We're in the process of putting rubber roofing systems on those canopy roofs. Also not identified here, but along the same lines, since we're talking about roofing, we also have a couple roofing guys here setting all of the metal fascia. That's basically the metal trim that finishes the roof along the perimeter of each structure, if you will. So the town hall gets a metal fascia trim. The connector piece, which is the small section between the gym and the town hall, that gets metal. And the community center gets it as well, including the gymnasium. So the crew is set up at the community center. They have a good chunk of the metal on the community center. And from there, they'll jump over to the town hall, through the town hall, then to the connector, and then finish up at the gymnasium. The ductwork serving the gym comes off of a unit that's sitting on the connector roof. They have come off of the mechanical piece of equipment with ductwork. They've gone through the openings in the exterior wall of the gymnasium, so they're basically now just poking through the openings with ductwork, and we've got a crew working inside to set hangers so they can begin hanging the supply and return ductwork that's slated for inside the gym. The flexible ductwork and diffusers, that's really a work in progress. Basically, the mechanical contractor has the first floor pretty much opened up for him everywhere, including the third floor. So we want to try to take a divide and conquer approach to getting diffusers set on the first floor and third floor at the same time. We're pushing hard for that. Acoustical ceiling grid on the third floor, the Board of Ed space. So that is pretty much wrapped up. I noted here from Monday when I did this update that the enclosed offices were complete And I would say by tomorrow, he should be 100%. He finished the open office areas yesterday, and he had one more office to do today on the east side of the Board of Ed. Millwork for the third floor, so we've got a bunch of millwork installed. There was a large copy area for the Board of Ed. That's been installed. We have bookcases staged up there, getting ready for install at some point next week. The two bathrooms that are up there, they both have porcelain tile. I think we're missing 7 or 8 pieces of porcelain tile in one of the bathrooms, so that's on order. Somehow we shorted that install, but those pieces hopefully will be here next week. We'll be able to finish that up. Moving into the community center on the interior side, we're hanging drywall. We've got a lot of drywall installed. You'll see that in the photos. We've got the hallways completed. We've got rooms completed on the hallway side. The crew is now moved into, the inside of the rooms. They're installing insulation now in the cavities of the walls. We have all the wood blocking completed, so they'll proceed right into hanging drywall on the inside of the rooms. I would say this week they'll be getting on that. Mechanical equipment startup. So we had the manufacturer's rep here, Swan Associates, working in conjunction with the commissioning agent, IES, who's contracted directly with the town, and our mechanical contractor. They're going through a startup. They're going through a sequence first before we just start moving air. So they're basically going through a pre-functional checklist of all the equipment, starting with the DOAs and the VRFs, and then they'll move on to RQ1, which feeds the gymnasium. I would say in a couple weeks, we're hoping to start to move air throughout the building. The plumber has set plumbing fixtures throughout the building. They've set toilets, they've set urinals. Some of the sinks in the single type bathrooms have been set. At this point, they're just waiting for vanities to get installed. That'll take place next week, so they can start setting sinks, for example, in the gang bathrooms that have vanities. In terms of the data progress, for the data crew, they have pulled the backbone cabling to the IDF rooms, to each of the sub data rooms, if you will. That work has been done. They're now working on terminations of data cabling on the first floor, and we'll be sending them up shortly to the third floor to start terminations up there. All right, so work on the horizon. We've got flagpoles here. They've been staged. As soon as the steel guys come back, we'd like to put this onto the steel crew's responsibilities to set those poles along the west side. We've got the 2 flagpoles, and we'd like to do that in the next couple weeks. We're also pushing for flooring. We want to position ourselves so that we start building this project, or finishing this project rather, from the top down. So starting with the Board of Ed, we want to get the carpet here in the next couple weeks. We've got a confirmation from the flooring subcontractor that he can have carpet here the week of May 4th, and we'll start on the third floor and work our way down and out of the building, with the community center really being last in terms of finishes. Inspections coming up. We've got one slated tomorrow for the Grand Hall to get that ceiling inspected so that we can start closing up that ceiling. That's a grid system that's going to have to work in conjunction with setting the light fixtures. It's not a typical acoustical grid setup there. We're making preparations now for the elevator subcontractor. We're running all of the dedicated power so that he's got power to mount his controllers at the top of the shaft. He is slated to be here in early May. We're tracking that closely to make sure he's still on track. Today, we relocated a section of temporary fence. I believe we talked about this at the last committee meeting. We basically needed to relocate all of the fencing along the east side of the project closer to the library, moving it to the other side of the sidewalk so that we can make the necessary improvements along Mazzicoli Way. Unfortunately, there's no other way to do this but to move the fence. So we're working on that. We got all the sections moved. The crew will be back tomorrow to put some permanent posts in the ground to make sure this fencing doesn't move anywhere if there's a high wind. And that'll set us up to start the sidewalk and curbing. The prep work for that's going to start next week. And then over the course of the next, I would say 2 to 3 weeks, we'll be working on Mazzicoli. So you'll see us prepping, you'll see us forming up for the curbing, the concrete curbing and sidewalk, and then you'll see us flow into the binder course for Mazzicoli Way. We'll probably hold off on final paving until we're a little bit further along in the project. And then just as a general note here, without going into too much detail and making this thing 30 pages, there's some general trades packages that we're obviously tracking delivery. We have quite a few packages that are coming at the end of the project, like we planned. Obviously with COVID-19, the dealing with that, some of these small general trade packages have, some issues that we're trying to work out behind the scenes. We've talked to the gym equipment and bleacher subcontractor. Unfortunately, Intercal, the company responsible for manufacturing the bleachers, that factory is shut down right now. They're based out of Michigan. And they've committed to us right now anyway that they're going to have bleachers to us at some point the middle of June. I'm not quite sure how they're going to pull that off just yet. We are keeping tabs on them to make sure that that is a real date, but that was as of yesterday. We had that discussion. The gym equipment, kind of the same thing. Well, we're told that we're going to see that in May at some point, middle of May. Again, the factory is shut down, but it's scheduled to open back up the first week of May. And that'll go pretty quick once it gets here. Other things that are coming in terms of the general trades packages, we have roller shades. I don't see any issues there. All that fabric was procured prior to dealing with COVID-19. We've got some other packages, the operable partitions. So the operable partitions that are going in we've got quite a few locations. One of them is the gymnasium. We have a huge divider there, right? It's over 100 feet long. We've got operable partitions in the community center. And then we've got a couple different conference room areas on the first and second floor of the town hall where these partitions are slated. And that factory is currently closed right now. So we are reviewing dates with the vendor responsible for providing these. We've got a number of tracks already set, so that's good. It gets us out of the ceiling, but we still need tracks for the community center. So I'm not sure just yet how that's going to affect us in terms of trying to finish the ceiling in there and how that's going to tie in with getting our inspections and finishing the multi-purpose room specifically. That's the area I'm talking about within the community center. We are working with the vendor. We had conversations these past couple days. They know that the turnover date right now that we're trying to achieve, middle of July, and they're trying to work with us as best they can to meet that date. We are going to certainly explore expediting options if we need to see if, we can speed up that process once the factory's reopened. So other critical items, again, the COVID-19 is probably the most critical thing right now, and dealing with that, dealing with, a number of issues, as you can see from the general trades packages. We're making calls here on a daily basis. We have 31 contracts on this job. So that's, 31 different subs that we have to stay in touch with to make sure, everything is showing up on time. The labor shortages from COVID-19. So far we've had 3 workers who have exhibited signs or symptoms, if you will, of the virus, and they have consulted with their doctors. They have They've been directed to stay home. They are self-quarantining. In accordance with our policy and really the CDC, they're staying home for the next 14 days. We've made a change in our policy so that when these workers feel that they're ready to come back to work, we will only accept them back on our site if they can show evidence that their doctor says it's okay for them to return to work. And only then will they be allowed back on site. But for now, we've got 3 workers representing the same trade that are not here, that is, having an impact on getting work done, obviously. It's almost half of the crew that was here from this trade. We're working with that company to see if we can pull resources from other projects to help us. And so far we were able to add a worker today, and hopefully we'll see another worker tomorrow to try to make up for this labor shortage right now. These guys that had showed signs and symptoms, this was prior to having the additional temperature monitoring that just started Monday. So we had one guy call out last week on Thursday. We had another guy of the same trade call out, and that was Friday. And then the third guy called out on Sunday. So that's where we stand. I mean, overall, we are keeping up with the other measures that we talked about, doing the sanitizing, keeping that up. We're going to be doing that twice a week. I mentioned Tuesday and Friday. We'll continue the temperature monitoring. I have a COP prepared to cover the costs out of CM contingency. Although I will dispute that this is an unforeseen condition. There's no one on the face of this earth, I don't think, that could have anticipated a virus like this. It's certainly an unforeseen condition, but we are charging this to CM contingency regardless of that. Does anybody have any questions before I get into the change order aspect of the meeting?
So Frank, it's Joe Harpy. The critical path area then seems to be pretty much within the community center. Is that a fair statement in terms of a delay in certain issues over there? In terms of, you mentioned the one company that shut down.
Well, like I said before, the operable partitions, they're in the community center, but they're also in the town hall as well. Now, whether or not that is a showstopper for the project, I certainly, I don't need the partitions necessarily to achieve a TCO and move people into the building. It's really a programmatic function. Could the town hall function without the operable partitions for a short period of time, if it absolutely came to that type of situation?
And then did you reference some gym equipment that may be held up, or the power for that gym equipment may be held up?
No, it's not the power. The infrastructure for the gym is basically in place. It's more really the bleachers at this point that seem to be the biggest holdup right now. And unfortunately, we're not getting a lot of information out of the factory other than they can, meet dates and have bleachers here by June 15th, which I think is a pretty aggressive, date to set right now, especially without knowing exactly when they're going to open.
Yeah.
So.
And where are they located?
Michigan.
Michigan. Okay. Are there any questions of Frank on the items just reviewed?
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Minor has a question for you.
Go ahead, Chris.
Hi, Frank. Just a couple of things. Is there any performance contracts with any of the manufacturers of that equipment that we'd be able to go after if this didn't go right? Or any drop dead dates for delivery for them, or no?
You mean like a bonding type of situation?
Yeah, was there any contracts in play that put delivery dates on there, or no?
No.
Okay.
The bonding for general trades packages was excluded.
Okay. All right. And the second thing was on the couple employees or subs that have tested, were they tested or did they just present symptoms?
No, I said they exhibited symptoms. To the best of my knowledge and belief, they have not been tested, so we can't say that anyone tested positive, but they
Okay.
have symptoms of the virus, so.
All right. And we just came across this on another project where the project management firm required 2 negative tests to be done concurrently before they were allowed back on the site in a similar situation. And the problem is they were doing 2 negative tests without ever doing a confirming presumptive test. So I don't know how you're going to handle that one.
Well, we'll have to see how it plays out, get the doctors involved and see what the letter says. If it's not satisfactory to Downs, they don't come back on the site.
Okay.
This
Thank
whole-
you.
Yeah,
That's
as
it.
far as
is
the
kind of-
testing aspect, Chris, I just have to educate myself more on that, and obviously we'll do whatever, guidelines are put out there by CDC, so.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, some of the experience that I've got on other sites that we're involved with is not necessarily actually having a confirmed test taken, but guys getting out and saying, I don't feel right, whether they're correct or not, that they're put out for 2 weeks. So,
I mean,
okay.
the
Appreciate it.
problem, I think, too, is you can get tested as negative, and then a week later you could have it. I mean, it's
Exactly. Yep.
an insane virus. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right, anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to consider to take action on change orders request. Frank?
Sure. Can we get to that section of the agenda? There we go. All right, so I have, so basically between the review and approval this evening, I've got 10 COPs. I have another 10 down below that are really what we classify as an order of magnitude. So another 10 that I'm sort of working on behind the scenes right now. So let's start with the review and approval section, starting with 182. We've got a couple allowances to deal with winter weather. This first one had to do with keeping some temp heating equipment on site to heat the space to get us through winter. We were lucky enough to realize a mild winter, and we were able to not use the heating equipment as much. So that saved us some money there, just over $5,000, $5,373.99. 183 is to basically implement provisions to provide weatherproof enclosures around a couple duct smoke detectors. These get mounted on ductwork that serves RTU1, which feeds ductwork into the gymnasium. That is the wiring, the enclosure, and heaters for those enclosures to accommodate 2 duct smoke detectors, one on the supply, one on the return, for $5,271.26. 189, so this one came up at the last meeting. I know there was some discussion about whether or not this should have been included, and I'll just say a couple things. Number one, the VCT was on the contract documents. I understand that there were discussions. It sounds like there was a meeting possibly prior to the final documents being issued, that basically in that meeting somebody said we couldn't use VCT. I guess the point I would make is, okay, well, you didn't pay for the sealed concrete. I guess you would have had to pay for it anyway. The question really is, if you're paying a premium now versus covering the cost of the work when we submitted the GMP. I think when you look at the quantity, of sealed concrete that's there, which is about 1,200 square feet, the upcharge here is like $1.49 a square foot. So to me, that seemed to be a reasonable price. So the offset there is $1,789 to get the sealed concrete inside the vault. 190, the $0 change, that is to add a bedpan cleanser. That's Transition Academy. That's coming out of our CM contingency. 192 is to work the electrical crew on a Saturday to expedite rough-in for the community center. That's just to, again, try to balance, in terms of finishes, try to balance the finishes, the stage of the finishes between community center and the town hall. And I think we are finally in a position where we're actually catching up to the town hall now. So the expediting of the rough-in inside the walls was necessary. We did that out of CM contingency. So there's no cost or no increase to the GMP. 194 has to deal with the precautionary measures that we've been talking about throughout this meeting today for COVID-19. I have outlined a number of items that have a cost associated with them, but again, allocating this cost towards CM contingency so the town does not realize any additional costs for it. That is to do the temperature monitoring over the next 5 weeks. There is some administrative time, some of my time, some of everybody's time sort of on the downside to deal with the 31 contracts, get Corona action plans from each subcontractor, mail out notifications to all of these subs. There is a cost associated with that. And that the sanitizing of the site, I mentioned 2 times a week. That's what the cost is based on, 2 times a week for the next 5 weeks. And that's it. We did mention upping the frequency of cleaning the temporary toilets. So we are doing that, but there's no cost outlined here. It's coming out of an allowance that's already in place for the base project. 195. So 195 has to do with a storm line that's right outside the gang bathroom on the first floor, which is adjacent to the gymnasium. It's room 1210, but it's right next to the gym. There's a storm line. Unfortunately, it was originally supposed to go into a storage room. Because of the structural conditions and limitations, we could not run this piping between the pieces of steel. We had to move it out into a hallway. So now we're dealing with an exposed 10-inch storm line. We are proposing to enclose that with framing and drywall, and that's what the 86309 is based on. 196, that's the other winter weather allowance. This had to do with getting through the concrete slab on grade, any wall pours that we had to do if we had to provide any heating equipment. And we did provide heating equipment for the wall placement at the community center. And we did have some ground thaw machine rental for slabs on grade at the town hall. But once we got through that and reconciled it, we were able to give back. This is basically half the allowance, the $23,087.95. 203, again, expediting the crew to get out of the gymnasium. That's to do basically all the overhead electrical work in the gymnasium. That's coming out of CM contingency, so there's no additional cost. And then 204 has to deal with the temp fencing section. There's over 500 feet of fence that had to be relocated. And as I mentioned before, we actually worked on that today. We're finishing it up tomorrow. And that's another CM contingency item. When you do the math on all those 10 COPs, you get a net deduct amount of $20,538.59.
Are there any questions of Frank on these? Well, Frank, it's great to see the numbers going the other way on the COPs. Seems to be thinning out, and we're getting a number of offsets. So we can get to the goal line on this. This would be great as we go forward, which I'm sure you appreciate as well. Okay, I'll entertain a motion on the COPs, net set off of $20,538.59. Mr. Mortensen, would you make the motion, please?
I move that we accept COP 182 through 204 for a net reduction of $20,538.59.
Is there a second?
Second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Okay, Frank.
All right, so the orders of magnitude, I got another 10 COPs on deck here that I'm working on. 34 has been out there for a while because we're not through the general trades packages just yet for the reasons I've already stated. We're keeping this off to the side until we get through deliveries with these guys. So right now we're still holding a credit of $33,956.50. 154 is the fiber loop around the building. This was a request, I believe, that came from the town, and we are now in receipt of a design that came through this week. I think it was right after I issued this update, we received drawings. So we'll be working on pricing for that. There's probably going to be some sequencing there. We may even split up this COP so that we evaluate a cost to do part of this fiber loop over Mazzacoli Way, and then see what the cost is to do the rest of this. I need to digest this one and get subs on board with it to start looking at it. 173, so that's the badminton courts. There were 16 badminton courts that I believe the Parks and Rec is looking for floor sleeves for. This is the same vendor that's providing the bleachers and the gym equipment. So again, we just got in touch with him. He's taking another look at this. We've got a rough order of magnitude right now to address that change of $6,876. 181 is to add provisions for power in floor boxes. There's a number of locations where we've got boxes with data but no power. This would be to add the power for $5,290. That's a rough order of magnitude. 197 is to set some wood blocking at the canopy roof sections. Again, that's a CM contingency item. Signage through SignPro. I think I mentioned this at the last meeting. We're dealing with SignPro instead of the signage vendor that we had on board originally. Unfortunately for them, the factory that they deal with to get the plastic for the signs is currently shut down, and they have asked to bow out of the project. I don't have a problem with that since SignPro can get on board and they said they can accommodate the schedule. There will be some costs involved that I think we can tap into the contingency, the CM contingency. There are some additional signs, however, that QA&M has issued to us. There would be an additional cost, and I'm just evaluating now what's actually additional and what is part of base contract, so we can figure out what that is. 199, another CM contingency item to deal with diffusers within the vault to finish off the ductwork that drops down inside the vault. Same thing, similar situation for the next one, number 200, the soffit vents. This is to provide venting for the underside of the canopies at the community center. And then 202 is the give back on contingency that we have earmarked in the budget, totaling $75,000. That's a give back and pumping up the owner's contingency. And then the last one has to deal with NCTV, knowing that they need some form of cooling, is my understanding within engineering. So we have reevaluated this. If you guys recall, we had started with another COP that was to add a unit and relocate a unit, which was going to be significantly more. It's under the rejected COP section a little bit further down for $25,000. Now we're just looking at relocating one of the units that we've installed. It's in an adjacent room. It's about 35 to 40 feet of additional line set to terminate a cooling unit inside the engineering room. And we've put a rough order of magnitude on that of $13,323. That would also include the electrical work that's associated with that. I have a couple other COPs that are not on this list but have popped up since I gave this update on Monday. COP number 206. We need to make provisions to add call for aid stations within the bathrooms. That was something that has come up in one of my walkthroughs, and I had consulted with Quisenberry, who confirmed that we do in fact need call for aid stations. This would be in the single bathrooms throughout the project. There's only 3 of them. So it would be a total of 3 bathrooms with call for aid stations being added. I don't have a rough order of magnitude yet. I need to sit with the drawings and figure out what's involved there, electrically speaking. The last one, 207, has to deal with provisions for access panels in the ceiling of the Grand Hall. So there are no provisions for access panels right now to get to volume dampers above the ceiling to make adjustments for airflow of the HVAC system. I've looked at this with our ceiling contractor. We've looked at where the volume dampers are located. I believe we have 5 or 6 of them. And I think we could make a number of these locations work with the existing metal ceiling panels. We only need a 6-inch by 6-inch opening. And I think we can modify the panels that we have as part of the system we originally bought to try to keep this cost down. We may end up needing just one access panel because there is one VAV unit where we need a 16 by 16 inch opening. So that may warrant an additional access panel. We're still investigating that one, and hopefully by the next meeting, I'll have a better update for you there. Under rejected COPs, I have nothing new to report there. That's all old information from the last meeting. And as far as the requisition process goes, you caught me at a point where I'm just putting together the April bill. The draft requisitions are due to us by the 20th of the month, which was just a couple days ago. So I'm in the process of assembling that. Just from a quick glance of the numbers, it looks like we'll be putting in place roughly another 1.3 to 1.4 million dollars of work this month.
So
All right, if we want to jump to the photos, unless somebody has any questions for me.
I just had a quick question. It's Joe Harpy, Frank. On the pending 207 change order, the access panels,
Yes,
they were either in the specs or the documents?
that is correct. Well, let me rephrase that. There's a general spec for access panels, but there is no detail for it anywhere in the drawings. Unfortunately, this is a different type of, because it's the Grand Hall, it's a different type of ceiling setup. It's the only location where you have a metal ceiling that sits in a track, so you don't have the ability like a conventional drop ceiling where you can just slide a ceiling tile. So it's a unique condition.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Counselor Minor has a question for you.
Yes, Chris.
Yes, just real quick, if you could, two, I had questions real quick. 181 that had data with no power, was that an omission or was there a change on that?
That appears to be an omission. I don't know if Chris O'Neill is able to speak, but I think he would agree with me on that.
Okay. And the second thing, just confirming again with 173, if that was also an omission or a change.
173 is a pure end user request as far as I can tell, unless, there were conversations or meetings held where somebody said we needed badminton sleeves, but there was nothing on the documents to indicate that. So in my mind, it's just an end user request.
Yeah, I think that was Billy DeMayo's request.
Okay. And the last one was on 205 with the relocation of the AC unit. Was that an omission or a work change order?
I would have to defer to the design team on that. You know, again, I don't know if this was a request that came after the fact.
Okay, is Chris
Or-
on with us or no? Chris
What's
O'Neill,
that?
is Chris on with us?
He's
He
here.
was.
I don't know if he's, Chris, are you here? I guess not.
All right, well, they're not up for consideration right this minute, correct?
No.
That's
Chris is,
correct.
guys, Chris is on the call. He just, his mic is muted. He's,
Can you unmute it?
no, now he just disappeared. So he was acknowledging that he heard you visually, but he was not able to answer.
Okay, I'll see if he calls back in real quick. And then 207 for the call for aid, that must have been a straight up omission, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
That
is
one-
Mark,
That one was in the specs, but not in the documents.
all right, so it was on number one, but was missing on number two?
Yeah, essentially, it's an omission.
Okay,
Yeah,
Is Mark-
the call for aid was not in the spec. The call for aid was just not in the spec. So we know that they are, they are required. So I would have to classify this one as omission.
okay. Is Mark Schweitzer on with us or no?
No.
Chris, Mark Schweitzer. Yes, I'm tracking him also.
Okay, that's all I needed. Thanks, Mark.
I knew you were going there.
Just so you know, Chris, and you may know this already, with Mark's assistance, we've already compiled a list of potential omissions.
Yeah, and it's normal. It happens. And you just need to track them to the end. And then at the end is when the final
Yeah.
reconciliation should occur with them.
Yeah, he's tracking them.
Okay. That's all.
Any other questions? Can we see some pics, Frank?
Yeah, sure. Let's go to the photos. There's a pile of dirt. So we're looking at, right now, we're looking at the east side of the town hall. You can see the outline of the steel that's going to form the main entry of the town hall along the east side. That was the work I had mentioned that happened over this past weekend. And we're getting them back this weekend to stay on detailing and finish the decking. And it's basically a mirror image. It looks almost identical on the other side, on the west side, with the exception of you have flagpoles on the west side. All right, let's go to the next photo, please. There is the bump out of the gymnasium. And again, this was taken on Monday. So at this point, they've already finished. You can see what looks like crown molding at the top of the wall, or cornice, or ephes. That work is now complete. They finished that yesterday. Stuff goes up pretty quick. It comes in like 10-foot sections. So it does go pretty quickly. And then you can see we got a guy down below. He is power washing the brick. That's a typical process that we go through. Once the scaffold comes down, they clean the brick, and all of that work is now completed. All right, next photo. Okay, so this is the rest of the cast stone that we have left to do. And again, this was from Monday, so he's a little bit further along. He's definitely going to be pulling off of this by the end of the week. That's the southeast corner of the community center. That's also the location where we're going to be placing the exterior stair that goes down into the gymnasium. And we're hoping to incorporate that work as well when we start up along Mazzicoli Way and keep the concrete guy here, and he can flow into that work. Okay,
Frank,
next
while
photo.
you're there right now, hold on one second. That lower level
Sure.
for the community center, what is the size on the screening for that HVAC equipment that's up there? There is screening on that level, correct?
No, there is no screening. The only screening that we are doing, Chris, is on the town hall. That was part of an alternate, and that screening is only at the town hall. There is no other screening for the project.
All right, so on that lower community center, that was excluded as part of the alternate.
I don't know if it was ever included. I don't recall that
Yeah, I
screening
know,
ever
I know
being.
it was early on, but it may have disappeared along the
Oh.
way.
It,
Okay.
it could have, but I wasn't part of those meetings or discussions,
Yeah,
so.
as far as what the council passed as an alternate on that was very general, just said
Okay.
roof screens.
Okay. All right, so all we're doing then is just the town hall portion and nothing on the lower community center.
That's right.
Nothing on the community center, nothing on the connector. I will say this, since I didn't mention it before, I don't think when we talked about schedule, the roof screen vendor is actually back. He's from California. He is back on site. He is now going to be proceeding with the install of the rest of the support posts that support that screen, because the overall roof screening at the town hall is about, I think it's about 12 feet, I want to say, above the top of the parapet. Extends about 12 feet beyond the top of the parapet, and that's going to give you the look of a hipped roof essentially when it's completed.
Okay.
And then hopefully by next week we can start setting those panels, but there's an awful lot of support posts that have to be installed before we get there.
Correct. Okay. All right. Thank you, Frank.
All right. Yep. Thanks, Chris. Next photo, please. All right. So there you have a typical bathroom setup. The vanities are going in. I believe those look like the sinks right off to the left. The American Standard boxes. Those are probably the sinks. And the plumber's working through all the plumbing fixtures right now, getting them installed. And so far, we're not running into any issues. We did have one counter actually where the cutouts for the sinks didn't line up properly. We had to kick one back, and that's being refabbed, but that's not any kind of showstopper. Okay, next photo. Again, just another shot of the bathroom, just to show you the overall look. The wet walls get porcelain tile. That is a typical setup in every bathroom. Unfortunately, you can't see the floor tile because as soon as it goes down, we protect it so that it doesn't get damaged. Since we do have other trades, we got to get in there. The one general trade package I didn't mention before, the toilet partitions, we're dealing with a local vendor, C&A. Some of you guys probably know C&A, you're familiar with them. They're responsible for providing the toilet partitions, the lockers, and the toilet accessories. And we just had a discussion with them yesterday. They are ramping up to be here, I believe, the week of the May 25th. So no issues there getting their work completed. All right, next photo.
Mr.
Please.
Chairman, before we move to the next one, Frank, Mr. Harpy,
Yeah.
town manager through Paul has a question regarding the flags and the illumination at the entrances. If I could
Sure,
unmute
go
that,
ahead.
speak to that.
Go ahead, please.
Hey, Joe, Paul Boutat. Town Manager Chapman had a question to QA&M and Downs regarding the location of the flag and raising and lowering for half-mast and then illumination on the flag as far as what is being proposed there.
Frank, do you have the information on that? Or is
So I can't, maybe Chris can, but I can't speak to the illumination without going back to the drawings and taking a look. I don't recall seeing that, but I can tell you, the poles are set up so that you can make the adjustments to go to half mast and what have you there. Take the flags down if you want to. There's certainly the capabilities there to do that. So I will check on the light unless Chris called back and he can talk. Maybe he's got a little more insight on it. I apologize. I can tell you whether or not there's illumination there, but if Chris can't talk, I'll go back and look and I'll let Keith know via email.
Chris, are you there and unmuted or are you gone?
Joe, can you hear me now?
Hello? Is that you?
Can you hear me now?
Chris, can you provide an illumination on that question?
I do not have an answer for that right now. I'll go back and look at the drawings. I thought I saw something at one point, but I will go back and check.
Okay, we'll follow up with the detail on that, Paul, for the town manager.
If an American flag is flown at night, it has to have illumination.
You are correct, Ed. Okay, Frank? you wanna go
Yes,
through?
sir. All right, so the next slide here, next photo is just a typical layout of a data room. This is on the second floor. You can see the data cables being pulled into the racks. The other cables off to the left there. Head to the left of the slide. That is your backbone cabling that's being pulled to each one of the IDF rooms. And there you have a typical kitchenette setup with the hardware on. Protection is on the countertop, and we are self-performing the cabinetry installation, and we made a pretty good dent on the second floor. And we continue to get millwork deliveries, so we'll be working on this next week to wrap up the second floor, and whatever millwork shows up, we're putting in as soon as it shows up. So we've got some millwork left to do on the third floor, and some odds and ends as well on the first floor.
Looks good.
Next photo. Here's a shot of the of a typical corridor along the second floor. You can see from the lack of debris or anything really in the hallway, aside from some material, I think that may be ceiling tile, that the second floor has come a long way, and we don't have a lot of trades going through there at this point, since a lot of the work now is concentrated down below, and the carpenters are really focused more on the community center, and they're pulling out of the first floor at this point. Okay, next photo.
Nice to see
There's
the COVID-19 poster.
Yeah, did you see that? You like that? We have those plastered everywhere. Anyway, this particular photo here, this is up on the third floor, and what you're looking at dead on is the tile backsplash, if you will, for every water fountain station will look this way. This just happens to be on the third floor, but that's your typical setup at every water fountain throughout the building.
Wow.
Okay, next slide. There's the millwork in the cherry finish that the Board of Ed had requested. That we actually caught this in time, almost unscathed from making this change, but we did pull this off, and this is a pretty recent install. Countertops are in fabrication right now. And just on the other side of this wall to the right of these cabinets is another bank of cabinets that's almost a mirror image of this side. Okay, next photo. Again, we're still up on the third floor. You can see in this photo here, off in the distance, the guy on the baker scaffold is setting acoustical ceiling grid. Again, this was taken on Monday morning, and since then he has finished the open office areas of the Board of Ed, which really just wraps that entire floor. A lot of it's open. You only have enclosed offices along the perimeter of the space, and he should be wrapping up all of the ceiling grid by tomorrow. He's got one office left to do. Okay, next photo, please. And this is just another shot of the third floor. Open office area. There's the vault. Unfortunately, I apologize, I couldn't get a picture inside the vault. Right now, we just have some temp light stands that were set up in there. But you do have a shot of the vault door completed. Inside the vault, you have all of the furring completed. The drywall is hung, including the the ceiling that also receives drywall. And at this point, we started taping all of the joints. And then pretty soon we'll be looking to start painting in there. And then all of the electrical gets surface mounted. There's also a dry chem system in this vault. It was a substitution. Quisenberry is getting that substitution approved through the state to make sure that we get certification of this vault. We also, talked about the sealed concrete earlier. We're going to hold off, obviously, on doing that. We got to get the dry chem system done and get all of the infrastructure in place. The dry chem system, I think I mentioned it at the last committee meeting, but that's another item that that particular vendor is affected by COVID. He's a vendor that's based in Milford. He's not a big vendor. He probably has 5 or 6 guys, and they are all at home. They're not coming into work. The factory that's responsible for fabricating the dry chem storage tank is also shut down. But we've been in close contact with this vendor in particular, who doesn't see a problem right now. They do see things picking back up in May for them, and they don't have a lot of time in terms of the install. Once they get here, they only need about a week or so to do that dry chem system. So again, that's another one that we'll be keeping close tabs on. Okay, next photo, please. All right, so this photo here, we are now in the community center on the west side of the community center. To my left, you can see a door frame directly to the left. That's going into the gymnasium. The rooms off to the right in the photo, that would be the transition academy and the daycare. And then all the way down the hallway, pretty much straight ahead, you've got the Parks and Rec faculty spaces. You've got a number of offices and a conference room. You can see all the sheetrock that's been completed. Yep. Thank you. Okay, so now we're looking in the other hallway of the community center. Now we're on the south side. Again, gym is off to the left. Off to the right, we have the Parks and Rec commercial kitchen, and then the multi-purpose rooms. Again, photo was taken Monday. All of this drywall that you see along the hallway, all of that is buttoned up all the way to the deck. And they've actually started taping in some sections. And I mentioned before, they're actually inside the rooms now, insulating the wall cavities, and they'll begin sheetrocking the interiors very soon. That's just a shot of the inside of the gymnasium. You can see the block prep that's been done. Above the door frame, if you sort of follow up towards the trusses, you can see what just looks like boxes coming through the wall. That's actually ductwork that's fed off of the unit that sits on the connector just outside that wall. And since this photo was taken, we actually had a painting crew come in here, and they've sprayed a good chunk of this ceiling already. They're almost halfway down this gym towards the windows of the gymnasium, which I believe is the next slide. If we go to the next slide, you can see a shot of the gym with the windows off in the distance. And again, a lot of painting is going on, and we also have the mechanical crew in there now making provisions to accommodate the supply and return ductwork that's going to tap off of the duct we saw earlier coming through the wall. I think that may be it, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions of Frank on what's been discussed? Chris, Joe Harpy, just so you know, it was alternate number 8, roof screens with an alternate pricing of $388,509. And the bulk of the discussion was on the town hall, the aesthetic look of the town hall to cover the units.
All right, so there was never anything on the lower level sections then?
No, not according to this.
Okay, thank you.
Frank, did you have anything else?
No, I'm good. I appreciate everybody's time. Hope
Okay,
everybody stays safe and healthy. To
Chris?
everybody here on the committee and everybody's family.
thank you. Same for your family. Chris, anything you'd like to add from Kerry Group?
Nothing further to add on my end.
Okay. Mr. Barron, consider to take action on fund transfers.
Yeah, since your change orders were negative, you have no transfers that you need to make. I'll put the money in the, transfer the money into the owner's contingency, if that's acceptable to the committee.
Eureka.
Hoorah.
Hallelujah.
Any other business pertinent to the committee? Public.
No, I think your next scheduled meeting dates are May 13th and May 27th.
May 27th. Public participation. Any member of the public wishing to speak, state your name and address. Do we have anybody in the queue, James?
Barbara is still there, but she has not indicated that she's looking to speak at this time.
Okay. Comments by committee members.
We're getting there.
I just want to give a lot of credit to the committee, to Downs, and to the supporting staff from town administration and the architect, Chris in particular, moving this project along. Another month or so, we will have invested 16 million plus of the taxpayers' money into this project. We're being very cautious and careful and wise in how we invest that money into the project. And it's taken a lot of work, a lot of extra work. Some would say unnecessary extra work, but we've gotten over that hump and we're moving forward. So I appreciate all of your efforts. It's been a big boost to me.
And to you, Joe Harpy, for all your work.
Well, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Rod Mortensen.
Second.
Bertha, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Take care, guys. We're so adjourned.
Okay.
Hoorah.
You
Thank
too.
you.